Welcome to the Danielle Robinson Podcast, where we explore the shifting intersections of culture, power, and womanhood in a world that keeps rewriting the rules. Today's episode is about the paradox of progress, how science, in trying to liberate the body, sometimes ends up legislating it. Because as technology expands what's possible, it also invites a new kind of control, one that wears the language of innovation, but still asks the oldest question of all: who gets to create life and on whose terms? We've entered an era where reproduction is no longer purely biological. It's biotechnological, where choice isn't just about contraception or abortion anymore, but about access to IVF, genetic testing, and embryo selection. In the span of a century, we've gone from Sanger's birth control clinic in 1916 to CRISPR gene editing, the ability to alter the very code of existence. It should feel like freedom, and in many ways it does. But every leap forward in science seems to provoke an equal and opposite reaction in politics. When the US Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in 2022, the ripple effects reached beyond abortion. In Alabama, a court ruling in early 2024 declared that frozen embryos could be considered children under state law, forcing IVF clinics to suspend treatments overnight. Imagine that. Fertilized cells in a laboratory granted the same legal rights as a living child. That's not just a legal question, it's a metaphysical one. It reframes creation as a moral act overseen by the state. It's the modern version of an ancient dilemma. When does life begin, and who decides? At one end of the spectrum, we have medical liberation, over-the-counter birth control, egg freezing, and IVF offering paths to parenthood for those once excluded. Single women, LGBTQ+ couples, older mothers. At the other end, we see reproductive control returning through new channels: legislation, moral lobbying, and data tracking. Even something as personal as contraception has become political again. In 2023, debates erupted across several US states over whether pharmacies could refuse to dispense the morning after pill on moral grounds. In Europe, surrogacy remains banned or restricted in many countries, seen by some as exploitation, but others as empowerment. Science, it seems, has made us gods, and politics keeps trying to remind us we're sinners. But beyond law and religion lies a quieter frontier: ethics. What happens when we can choose the traits of a future child, when embryos are selected not just for health, but for potential? Do we risk turning creation into consumption, the child as a product of preference rather than a person of chance? CRISPR Cas9 technology has made gene editing a reality. In 2018, when a Chinese scientist claimed to have created the first gene-edited babies, the world responded with horror, not because it wasn't possible, but because it was. The World Health Organization later warned that the science of editing human embryos raises profound risks to human dignity. And that's the paradox of progress. The tools that could eliminate suffering can also deepen inequality. If only the wealthy can afford to design health or intelligence, then autonomy becomes stratified, one class literally born more privileged than another. The conversation around surrogacy embodies that same moral tension. In countries like India and Ukraine, commercial surrogacy has become a billion-dollar industry, a lifeline for families who can't conceive, but also a livelihood for women renting out their wombs. Critics call it reproductive outsourcing. Supporters call it reproductive agency. Is it exploitation or empowerment? The answer, like so much in women's autonomy, depends on who's allowed to speak. Because even in the age of advanced fertility science, the voices of the women who gestate, donate, or nurse remain the least amplified. They exist at the intersection of technology and silence. And what of contraception, that cornerstone of autonomy? In 2023, the US FDA approved the first over-the-counter birth control pill, hailed as a milestone for reproductive freedom. Yet in many developing nations, contraception remains inaccessible or stigmatized. According to the United Nations Population Fund, 257 million women worldwide still lack safe, reliable access to contraception. So while one woman can walk into a pharmacy and take control of her future, another is denied even the right to plan it. The gap between innovation and equality remains vast. Technology also brings new forms of surveillance. Period tracking apps, once marketed as tools of empowerment, have become potential instruments of control. After the Dobbs ruling, women across the US began deleting menstrual apps for fear their data could be subpoenaed as evidence in abortion cases. In the digital age, even fertility is traceable. Every click, search, and symptom stored in corporate servers. What was once private is now proprietary. As philosopher Michel Foucault might say, power no longer needs to punish, it just needs to monitor. It's tempting to view all this as a clash between science and morality, but I think it's something deeper, a reckoning with what it means to be human in an age when we can design life itself. We've reached the threshold where biology meets ideology, and creation has become both miracle and minefield. For centuries, the womb was treated as destiny. Now it's treated as data. And yet, neither framework fully captures the complexity of what it means to choose, to conceive, or to create. Maybe the challenge of this new frontier isn't to master creation, but to humanize it, to remember that the ethics of science are not found in the lab, but in the lives it touches. Progress should expand freedom, not replace it with another kind of oversight. Because autonomy, at its core, isn't about domination, it's about dignity. It's not about owning life, but honoring it. If this episode resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell. It helps more people find this conversation. Share this video with someone who's ever wondered where innovation ends and ideology begins. And let's keep the dialogue alive in the comments below. And if you'd like the full expanded version of this topic with deeper research, history, and reflection, listen to the Danielle Robinson Podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Because science may shape our future, but ethics will decide what kind of future it becomes.